Hello, welcome back to PewTube, and happy Veterans Day. I don't know if happy is the right word for that, but yes, thank you veterans for your service. I think in honor of Veterans Day today, I wanted to take a moment to talk about 1911. I figured it was either that or the M16, and I've got some other things I wanted to talk about with that. So for now, we're going to focus specifically on blank firing 1911 options for either theater or film. That's a big enough category for one chunk, I think. So the 1911, for those of you who don't know, this was the standard military sidearm starting in about 1911. You'll be shocked to hear. Phased out in, I believe it was 1986 by the Beretta 92 as the standard Army sidearm. The 1911 variations of it are still issued to this day, however. It's very common not just with the military, but also in the civilian market. There's all sorts of variations on it. It's a popular concealed carry option in some formats. Being a single stack semi-automatic, it's a little bit flatter in profile, which can make it a little more comfortable, a little easier to conceal sometimes. So originally this was a semi-automatic in 45 ACP, so it's a larger, slower velocity round. The thought was that it would have a little bit more stopping power. When we traded off to the Beretta 92, we were switching back to a 9mm double stack, so kind of going for more capacity over individual round stopping power, various trade-offs. But anyway, 1911A1. Most of the people who do blank firing firearms for theater are familiar with these as the either the Bruni or the Kimars. They're pretty much the same. There's not a whole lot of difference between those two brands. And if you've heard me talk about these before, they're really not my favorite. They have a variety of issues. The one that best exemplifies that is actually out on a rental right now. I think it's Biloxi Blues. They wanted as realistic a one as possible, just for waving around, sticking down on a table. They're not actually firing it, so I was fine sending that out. But it means I can't show you that right now. So these they come in either top vent or front vent. We've had the top vent available in the U.S. for ages. Front vent only a little more recently became available. Now the top vent is typically made to be an 8mm. They come in a variety of finishes as well. This is an example of an older Kimar 1911. You can see it's got that little top vent hole. And these were marked as being for 8mm blanks. Yeah, there we go. Cal 8mm, okay. This particular one, as with so many of them, started having issues, and so what I did was I actually pulled the firing pin. Sights have since fallen out on this one as well. So this one got delegated to non-firing prop duty, but just when people wanted something shiny and metallic that could make that little click-clack sound. But various issues with these. First of all, that safety does not really engage, does not really work. I'm not sure it did when it was even new. Let's see if this newer, and this is actually the front vent version, which is made for 9mm PAK. This is pretty common that the top vent versions were marketed as being 8mm and the front vent is 9mm. The magazines are identical. It's just whether or not it's got that plugged barrel and the vent hole up top, or an open barrel and no vent hole. So by comparison, we have 8mm blanks next to a 9mm blank. Similar kind of plastic casing in the front, but you know, 1 more millimeter's worth of powder and propellant going into that. Slightly bigger bang, slightly smaller bang. But the issues I've had with these Kimars and the Brunis both, one is sometimes I get sear issues. The one that's out on a rental right now, if I pull the hammer back here, I can probably wait about 20 seconds to a minute, and then it'll snap down on its own. Obviously not a great idea. The real 1911s, those are generally carried what we call cocked and locked. So people who carry 1911s, for the most part, they will carry it with a round in the chamber and a full magazine. Hammer is back, safety is engaged. And that's because these are single action only. If I just pull the trigger, nothing happens. So kind of like with the old West 6 guns, if you want to fire it, you have to cock it first. But unlike with the old West 6 guns, when you fire it, the slide will travel back and cock it for you. So once you fired your first round, it's already cocked, and it's a very easy single action trigger pull. But if you're carrying it without cocking it first, it's a little bit harder to get that first shot off. So most people who carry this will carry it cocked and locked. One of my little pet peeves is when I see a movie and there's people sitting there threatening each other. I think Transporter is one of the ones where I noticed it more recently. Maybe it was Transporter 2. I don't know. You see it all the time. Agent Carter, same issue, where they're threatening somebody, they're holding them on at gunpoint with a very obviously not cocked 1911. Not a real immediate threat. And if you are pointing one of these at a trained agent like Agent Carter, and it's not cocked, by the time that you can stop, pull the hammer back, and then fire again, they would have disarmed you and pistol whipped you with your own gun. So, the fact that you can't trust it to stay locked on some of these is an issue for me, for a number of reasons. I also have had a bunch of jams with them. And then the other big problem I tend to have with these, let's see if this one does it too, I kind of feel a little bit. There's something about the magazine release on these, and I've had this happen with older ones and with newer ones, but where, actually it's worse on some of the newer ones. If you try and reinsert the magazine, whether the slide is locked back or not, which it should do when it's out of ammo, if you try and reinsert the magazine, it will hit the little magazine retention bit in there, and it can sometimes snap that off. It's plastic. And so if you don't hold in the magazine release while you're reinserting the magazine and then let it go and then make sure it's stuck, it's very easy to break some of these. Just to break off that little piece of plastic, but then that means that once that's broken, the magazine won't really stay seated properly, which means that as soon as there's a little bit of shock, like from firing it, it's going to unseat, and then it's not going to be able to chamber the next round. You're going to have a jam. So, also, obviously not ideal. It's kind of awkward to have to hold that while inserting the magazine, and then have to let it go, and then make sure that it actually is seated. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. And it's just a stupid, small little plastic part. You'd think that they could maybe make that out of something a little bit better, ramp it a little bit better so that it'll feed and click in place. It might be a quality control issue. Some of these it works okay with. Yeah, this one, you can feel it hitting, right? It goes to there and it stops. Don't go hard, or what happens is you do actually break it. And now it's clicked in. There we go. So this one isn't broken yet. I believe the one that I've shipped off for the rental might be. I've handled these that different departments owned, and a lot of them have that same issue with the magazine. So it's something you got to watch out for with these. That said, it's a popular in-demand model if you're doing Biloxi Blues. If you're doing anything set, Vietnam, World War II, Korean War, a lot of shows, this is really what you need. And in terms of what you can get in blank fire in this country, Bruni and Kimar kind of have it cornered, unfortunately. Now that said, for a little while there, you could get the Umarex models. Now, Umarex USA stopped importing blank guns about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. When I found out about it, I bought off the last of their Chief Special models. I wish I'd gotten more of these 1911s, because these were really the only 1911 that I trusted to be at all consistent in blank firing. Now, when they were importing them to the USA, this was before front vent models became more common in this country. So, as with a lot of the Umarex models, when they were converted to top vent, they cut this weird notch out of the top of the slide. I guess so that as the slide goes back, that vent hole is still not covered. So I'm sure there's a reason they did it. I have had, not a 1911, but I've had Umarex models. I had a P22 where the slide broke. And I'm convinced that it's partly because of that adaptation for the top vent. But that said, being the Umarex ones, one of the nice things they do, they actually have trademarks. I believe they made a Smith & Wesson version as well, but these are the Colt 1911A1, which was what I was able to get some of. So I have some of these in front and top vent, and I also was able to get a couple of them in front vent. But these examples right here, where we've got, for some reason, there's also a couple of different finishes out there, and I'm not sure if that just has to do with when they were made or whatever. The markings are otherwise pretty much identical, but some of these have that sort of matte finish, which I think works pretty well for that, the GI look. And some of them have more of this sort of gloss finish that makes the markings stand out a little bit more. The trademarks. This one also had some Colt grips put on it to match as well. You know, and they do have the markings on the other side that do talk about how they're blank vent. To me, for film work, having this weird cutout in the top vent kind of ruins the whole point in having the trademarks, because it still doesn't hold up in a close-up. And being top vent, you don't get muzzle flash or any of that stuff. But I do trust the safeties on these. I trust the sears on these. I trust the function of the Umarex much better than I do the Bruni or the Kimar. Now, I really wish I'd gotten more of these while I had the chance, but I was able to order briefly some of these in the front vent. And this, unlike with the Brunis and the Kimars, front vent and top vent are both 9mm PAK. They didn't adapt them otherwise. But it's just so nice not to have that stupid cutout in the top of the slide. And to have one that has the trademarks and doesn't have the obvious adaptation that marks it as a blank gun. So this is something that could actually hold up much better for a screen close-up if you needed to. If you get really close, you can see there is a little bit of a divider in the muzzle. I don't know if you can see that. I've got my lighting quite right. There's a little bit of a divider partway down. But it doesn't completely block the muzzle, and you'd have to see it at just the right or just the wrong angle for that to actually show. But otherwise, you know, this is something that could do a very good job of representing what it's supposed to for a film close-up. Can we see the divider? Yeah, there we go. You see that little bit of a dot in there when it focuses a certain way. But otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, this is as good as you're going to get for the blank firing 1911 A1. And if anybody ever gets a line on more of these Umarex models from Europe, where we can still get these, and has a way to legally import them into the US, I know myself and Jeff Kent, who's rented some of these from me before, and a lot of the other firearms guys who are doing theatrical work would certainly love to have access to those. Now, going into stuff that's a little less common, but worth mentioning perhaps, these are a couple other older models that every now and again I used to see pop up, and these are, they're labeled the Napoleon. I don't even know for sure which company makes them, and they're made in Italy, as are the Brunis and the Kimars and a couple other brands. I got these, let's see, I used them for some of my first firearms movies I worked on. Urban World. I think Urban World is where this one, the slide got cracked a little bit, so I don't use this one to fire blanks with anymore. I don't really trust it. A little crack in the slide there. I think one of my actors stepped on it. But yeah, I also have this one in all black. You know, and these were reasonably reliable as blank guns go for firing. They are top vent. They are 9mm. They don't have the right trademarks, and they also have this weird kind of, as with the Denix models, the non-firing Denix models, some things are just kind of molded in and not functional. So this safety doesn't actually move. This is molded into the frame, as is that supporting spring. The magazine release is not a functional magazine release. That's also just molded into the frame. But there's a little clip on the bottom here. That's the magazine release, like you might find on some of the PPKs or whatever. So it, you know, it kind of works. Obviously plugged to barrel, top vent. It's got a little bit of a molding here as though it might have had the grip safety that some of the 1911s have. This one obviously does not. So, you know, these will occasionally pop up places on the used market. And they, you know, they're functional. In some ways I like them better than the Bruni or the Kimar just because there's less ways in which they're likely to break, other than, you know, running over it and breaking the slide or dropping it or whatever happened here. But the trade-off for that is there's things that aren't even really there. They're just molded into the frame. And then up last I have, this is probably the rarest of the blank firing ones I have. This was made by a company called Reck, which I believe is related to Umarex, but I'm not positive about that. But it's another German company. This is an 8mm. And this is a blank firing compact. So the actual 1911s come in a variety of frame sizes, variety of calibers, variety of finishes, variety of ergonomics. You can even get them in polymer frames now, which is kind of blasphemy to the true 1911 aficionados. But one of the versions you used to have is these, and still have, is these compact. Sometimes they're referred to as sort of an officer's model or whatever, but called Commander or something like that. This one is the Reck Automatic Commander. So it does not have proper trademarks, but it's not too far off. And it's nice. It's got real wood grips. It's got a decently functioning safety. Little magazine for you there. It's got some sights. I haven't used this one much, and this is the trade-off. When I get things like this that are fairly rare, I don't want to use them a whole lot because I know that if they break, if they get run over or broken like that other Napoleon model did, then I'm not going to be able to replace it, and that would make me a little bit sad. But when the right job comes along for this, it'll be a nice option to have. It's something that you're not going to instantly recognize as a blank gun. Those of us who do this a lot, I'll be watching a movie and I'll be like, oh look, they're using a Voltron Massey, or they're using a Zeraki 925, and you can just recognize some of these telltale, really common models of blank guns. So that's one reason why it can sometimes be nice to have something a little bit different. And within this size, there's not a whole lot out there other than the PPK type models, the old James Bond Walther PPK. So this is a comparable size to the PPK, but while that one is by heritage specifically German and has more of the Nazi associations, this one is by heritage specifically American and has more of the the American GI associations. So there could well be a job for which this could be perfect someday. I'll be happy to be able to trot it out. So those are our main blank firing options for 1911s, at least within the United States right now, for theater or film, television, video. Of course, we also have our other standard options of going with something that is solid molded rubber or plastic. I've started seeing 3D printed ones for sale on eBay and places like that. There's patterns for 3D printed ones on Thingiverse, although most school maker spaces, I've discovered, will not let you print anything that looks even remotely like a weapon. There's airsoft, either spring guns, which are super cheap and all over the place, or gas blowback, which can be much nicer and fancier. There's plenty of other options out there besides blank firing. But if you need it to go bang on stage, if you need that big old muzzle flash, there's also the model guns. I guess they have the 5 or the 7mm caps, but those are getting rare. They're fragile. They're breaking. Most companies aren't making them anymore. So for the most part, if you need the boom and if you need a decent flash and you don't want to do it digitally, blank fire is the way to go. And so hopefully this has helped you feel out what those options are going to be. All of the things that I've shown you today are available for rent through Fight Designer LLC. But I'm sure there's other companies out there that can do some of this for you as well. Preferred Arms out of Northern Virginia, run by Rob Hunter. That's a very reputable company who I recommend. If you can afford them, Weapons Specialist in NYC or ISS out in LA, those are top of the line. You'll pay for it. They're not cheap, but those are who the big boys go to when there's a legit Hollywood production or Broadway or something like that. Most of who I cater to is academic theater, smaller independent films, community theaters, things like that, where they're not going to be spending a couple grand on props. And so this is the kind of stuff that you can either buy for yourself or rent from me or someone else. So hopefully that'll help you out. Again, happy Veterans Day. Enjoy your productions and good luck. Stay safe, look good, and don't forget to subscribe to PewTube. Check out the Theatrical Firearms Handbook, either the book itself online, at a library somewhere. You can buy it on Amazon. Or we also have a Facebook page for the Theatrical Firearms Handbook where we share industry news and events and developments that are related to the industry. And subscribe below. Thanks for watching.